The inscrutable secrets of the universe can hardly be fully revealed. And even what at first glance seems to be the immutable truth can in some cases be very controversial. The distortion of historical facts to suit political, economic and moral and ethical interests is no longer so surprising, as the concept of alternative history grows more and more popular with each passing day. This is going to be a rather large and fascinating video. Here I want to tell at once that I don't claim any truth in the last instance, and in general, all information for this video is taken from open sources. Therefore, I advise you to watch this video, and at the end I will make a conclusion that will satisfy everyone. So, you're on the Visioner channel, let's get started. What if it's not just history that's distorted? Modern geography, geodesy and other sciences have elevated the idea that the Earth is round to an axiom, but this theory also has its opponents. At first glance, the idea of a flat Earth can be perceived as a joke, but its adherents give more and more convincing evidence in favor of their theory, which look quite logical and reasonable. Is it so, or in this case science does not lie? Who knows? Flat Earth theory, basic concepts. The essence of this theory reveals its name. According to the assumptions of flat earthers, the globe is a round disk, the center of which is the North Pole. And the South Pole is not on this map in principle, instead there is a high ice wall encircling the Earth. What is behind the wall is a mystery. Some suggest that behind it there is just ice and permafrost, others believe that there is a parallel life of other inhabitants of the planet, and still others believe that the wall serves as a barrier, behind which there is absolutely nothing. The map, which visually reflects the structure of the flat Earth, is called azimuthal. The planet is 40,000 kilometers in diameter. Above this huge disk, like a dome, rise the constellations, the sun and the moon. And for the day to follow its course and the day to change the night, it is not the planet itself that rotates, but the dome directly above it. This is why the constellations move through the night. The bright sun is replaced by a mysterious and cold moon, and sunrise and sunset alternate regularly. And since the sun is constantly moving, the usual notions of the solar system have no right to exist either. The flat Earth concept does not consider the solar system in principle because the sun rotates at breakneck speed and the planets simply could not follow it and rotate about their own axis. The gravitational force of the planets also serves as a weighty argument. If you believe modern scientists, the Earth ranks third among the planets around the sun. But according to the laws of physics, the gravitational force is directly related to the mass, which means that the smaller the size of the planet, the closer it must be to the sun. Performing simple mathematical calculations, we can understand that the Earth should not be on the third, but on the sixth place. Then our world would be enveloped in permafrost because the atmosphere simply physically could not get warm enough to comfortably support life. But if everything is arranged exactly as seen by adherents of the flat Earth theory, what about flights into space, the many photographs of the Earth taken from outer space, data on other planets and other information that clearly demonstrates the structure of the universe? In the opinion of the Flatlanders, all this is nothing more than a fiction, a staging and a deception of enormous proportions. The illusion created by Freemasons allows to hide the truth from the population. One proof of this assumption is the Apollo 11 picture of the Americans allegedly flying to the moon. With detailed magnification one can see that the spacecraft is made of improvised materials, foil, planks, oilcloth, cardboard, etc. In fact, it is just a decoration designed for filming the astronauts, who, by the way, did not even bother to take off their jewelry, bracelets and rings, on which you can see the engraved letter G inside the compass and ankle, the symbol of the Masonic movement. And the pictures of Mars? The unreal and mysterious beauty of this mysterious planet, according to the adherents of the flat Earth theory, is nothing more than photo filters, the play of light and shadows, classic computer programs that any advanced schoolboy knows how to work with. If you remove the effects of Photoshop from these pictures, you get very beautiful, but still quite real landscapes taken in the remote corners of the Earth, untouched by the hand of man. A bit of history, or where does the theory of a flat Earth come from? At first glance it may seem that the theory of a flat shape of our planet is nothing more than a fashion trend, which now has a lot of scattered on the internet. However, this is not the case. Looking through the prism of history, we can trace how the opinion about the shape of the Earth has changed. Mention of this theory can be found in the earliest mythology of Egypt and Babylon, in Hindu and Buddhist writings, and in Scandinavian epics. And even the ancient philosophers whose teachings are considered a historical legacy, among them Leucippus and his disciple Democritus, were firmly convinced that the Earth is flat. The oldest manuscript of the Book of Enoch, found in Qumran, held the same idea. However, over time, these beliefs gave way to astronomical knowledge, and the idea of a flat Earth fell into oblivion. In the Middle Ages, the question of the shape of the Earth became debated again. One striking example of this idea was the Christian topography, written by Cosmas Indicopoulos in 535 to 547. In it, the planet is represented as a rectangular plane with a dome on top. Some people, hiding behind the name of Christians, claim, along with pagan philosophers, that heaven has a spherical shape. No doubt these people are misled by eclipses of the sun and moon. This work and translation was widespread in Russia because at that time it was a unique encyclopedia of medieval knowledge, and there was no reason not to believe it. One of the best examples of the theory was an engraving published in the book Atmosphere. Popular Meteorology, which came out from the pen of the French astronomer Camille Flammarion in 1888. It depicts a pilgrim reaching the edge of the Earth and peering out from under the dome toward new worlds. The caption to the image reads as follows. A medieval missionary tells us that he has found the point where the sky touches the Earth. How did the Flat Earth Society form? In the 19th century, adherents of the concept described came together in a group, the Flat Earth Society, led by the English scientist Samuel Robotham. For several decades, he conducted all sorts of experiments, studies in support of his theory, and, importantly, found a lot of evidence. Using the pseudonym Parallax, he wrote Zetetic Astronomy, in which he thoroughly and easily laid out all his findings and results, disproving the spherical shape of the planet. Originally a small work, Robotham's work was reprinted several times, becoming more and more extensive and evidential as it was continually supplemented by the Society's students. Until his death, Samuel Robotham defended his theory, conducting numerous lectures and seminars around the world. The adherents of Robotham's theory later united into the Universal Zetetic Society, which found its adherents in all corners of the planet. Since 1956, this organization, led by Samuel Shenton, has once again been called the Flat Earth Society, but with the meaningful prefix International. When Shenton saw photos of the globe from orbit, he never doubted his convictions for a moment. It's easy to see how pictures of this sort can fool an uninformed person. Since 1971, Charles Johnson had been the head of the organization. He launched a major campaign to promote his ideas, distributing leaflets, producing pamphlets in which he defended the flat Earth model. Thanks to this activity, the number of supporters of the theory increased several times during his presidency. Arguments for the flat Earth theory. In order to make an informed decision about the shape of our planet, we should consider the arguments of both sides, figuring out which ones are the most reasonable and consistent. So, what do flat earthers say about their theory? The speed of rotation of the Earth. Scientific data states that the Earth rotates around its axis at a speed of the order of half a kilometer per second. It's hard to even imagine such a fast object. A few simple experiments, such as jumping, speak in favor of flat earthers. Everyone knows that by jumping up, a person lands in the same place. But what about rotation? After all, in the fraction of a second that he was in the jump, the planet would have moved a considerable distance, and the landing point would have been a different point. This is the same result of firing a cannon into the sky. In addition, if shot to the east, against a direction of rotation, the core should fly half as far as normal, and if shot to the west, twice as far. Nevertheless, this does not happen. And the pilots flying over the Earth have never recorded how it rotates, although who else but them should be able to see the change in the position of the planet from above. 2. The horizon is perfectly flat. Look into the distance. Look closely, without losing sight of the slightest detail. What do you see? A perfectly straight edge of the horizon in the area where it is clearly visible. Fields, meadows, sea surface cannot deceive. After all, in free terrain, the eye covers several kilometers in the distance, so why are they perfectly flat? According to adherents of the theory, the answer is obvious: the Earth is flat. In addition, high objects, e.g., towers, lighthouses, mountaintops, would simply not be visible because the spherical surface would close them from the attentive eye, as the horizon line would be significantly higher. But this does not happen, and it is possible to admire the mountains from a very long distance, counting more than 1 kilometer. 3. Air travel routes. Many flights, especially long-distance ones, at first glance seem illogical from the point of view of the spherical shape of the Earth. Looking at the globe, one might wonder why pilots choose such seemingly illogical routes and inconvenient refueling points. However, there is no mystery or irrationalism in this. If you compare these routes with a flat map, it becomes clear that the route is perfectly laid out. 4. Star pattern. If all objects in the universe are in constant motion, then why are the stars in the sky arranged exactly the same way both today and several centuries ago? After all, in theory, the star pattern should change if not every day, then certainly once a week. However, this does not happen. The thing is that the stars are just holograms on the heavenly dome, which cannot change, move relative to each other, and even less fall. And the famous meteor shower, which eagerly awaits all the romantics of the world to make a wish, is a holographic effect. 5. The yellow color of the sun. Scientific laws are quite lengthy to explain why the sky is blue and the sun is yellow. According to official data, ultraviolet light passing through the atmosphere scatters into spectra, one of which colors the sky. However, this does not explain why some of the rays concentrated around the sun do not scatter, because then it should be blue. Isn't it because the sun is below the dome sky, which limits space? As it revolves around the earth, it alternately illuminates the area, so the light hours alternate regularly. 6. Spaceflight is a hoax. None of the flat earthers have seen outer space with their own eyes, which means that one can dispute its existence to the point of hoarseness. Photographs are fake, videos are nothing but special effects, and flights into space are fantastic stories. Convinced adherents of this theory, even several times organized an expedition exploration to find places of photography on the moon. And when astronauts were asked to swear on the scriptures that they had been to the moon, they all showed aggression and evaded the answer. 7. The free flow of rivers. According to the law of communicating vessels, the network of bodies of water enveloping the Earth simply could not exist on the spherical planet as we see it today. However, rivers flow west, east, north, and south in almost equal numbers, and their depth and fullness have nothing to do with geographic location. Such characteristics are only possible if the Earth is flat. 8. The view of the technicians. One of the weighty arguments in favor of their theory flat earthers use the universal conspiracy of engineers, technicians and other personalities, in one way or another, associated with working in vast spaces. For example, surveyors do not consider the curvature of the earth when designing buildings and structures. But in such a case, a structure made according to this design simply would not be able to withstand the total load and would collapse. But this does not happen, and the buildings sit idle for decades. There is only one conclusion to be drawn. They know that the earth is actually flat, but they keep this secret from the population. The same applies to airplane pilots who, when taking off from a spherical surface, no longer adjust their flight path until they land. How? Because under such conditions, the plane would fly into outer space. And if you look at it from the perspective of a flat earth, everything falls into place. This evidence is the most common evidence that the Flat Earth Society uses to disprove an accepted theory. To judge their validity, we must also consider the beliefs of the so-called globetrotters who hold the scientific viewpoint. Why is the Earth a ball? Arguments disproving a flat Earth. The concept espoused by the scientific community provides many justifications in its favor, some of which look quite convincing. So what do the chairovers argue in favor of their theory? The moon and its eclipse. Even leaving aside the photographs proving the existence of the moon as a satellite of our planet, the shadow that the Earth casts as it gradually reaches the lunar eclipse directly attests to its sphericality. Even Aristotle, who advocated the spherical nature of the planet, viewed the shadow cast as an oval, which directly contradicted the theory that the Earth was flat. 2. The change of constellations. This argument was also considered as far back as Aristotle's time. Traveling around the world, he recorded the position of the stars in the sky and the visibility of each of them. Thus, when he was at the equator, he discovered constellations that were not visible at other latitudes. And the further from the equator the scientist was, the less familiar stars he saw, which were replaced by others. This effect could only be explained by the fact that a man was looking at the sky from a spherical surface, otherwise the location would not affect the visibility of the stars so much. 3. Time zones. Although half-Earthmen claim that the change of the time of day is due to the rotation of the sun, chairovers are convinced that it is the Earth that rotates around its axis. This is why different countries have different times, and when, for example, it is deep night in America, in China the sun shines and the day is in full swing. 4. The force of gravity. Another proof of a spherical planet is gravity, the force of attraction between objects. According to the laws of physics, it acts relative to the center of mass. But when an apple falls, it lands from top to bottom, not at an angle to the center, and a person walking on the surface of the Earth feels the attraction to the bottom, not sideways, closer to the center of the disk. This is why it can be judged that the center of the Earth, from which the maximum gravity comes, is under it every time, which means that the Earth has a spherical shape. However, flat earthers reject this proof because they believe that gravity is just the result of the planet's upward motion with acceleration. 5. Visibility of objects from a height. If one climbs a mountain, a tall tree, or a lighthouse, looking at the outline of the horizon through binoculars, one may notice that the distance of visibility increases in direct proportion to the height at which one is standing. Of course, visible obstacles can interfere with the clarity of the experiment, but in a field or meadow this effect is most noticeable. But if the Earth were flat, the height of the observation platform would have no effect on the visibility of objects on the horizon. This is only possible if the planet is shaped like a sphere. 6. A ship on the horizon. Sailing, the ship on a perfectly smooth sea surface does not disappear at once. First of all, its hull is lost from sight, and only after this the sails disappear behind the horizon. It is the same when the ship approaches the shore, you can see the sails at once and only then the ship itself. This directly proves that despite the apparent straightness of the horizon, it is curved by the spherical shape of the Earth. 7. The sundial. The effect of the sundial is calculated based on the shadow that the sun gives at different times. By sticking a stick in the ground, you can observe how the shadow from it gradually changes its shape. And if the world were a plane, the position of the stick would not affect the shape of the shadow, and it would be identical at different points. However, even a seemingly insignificant distance of several tens of kilometers between the two experimental ones gives different results, and the shadows differ from each other by at least a few tenths of a millimeter. This principle was used even before our era in calculating the circumference of the Earth, which was carried out by Eratosthenes. 8. Documentary facts. Although flat earthers claim that photos from satellites and space missions are hoaxes, chairovers are firmly convinced of their existence. Numerous pictures of our planet, obtained from outer space, flights to the moon and the study of other planets, the scientific heritage that mankind has achieved over hundreds of years of experiments and developments. True, a lot of money is invested in these studies, and their effectiveness is only confirmed by images, but this is the other side of the coin. The flat Earth in the context of contemporary art, no matter how controversial the theory that denies the generally recognized shape of our planet, it has repeatedly surfaced in the works of science fiction writers, filmmakers and writers. It is enough to recall Clive Lewis's widely acclaimed Chronicles of Narnia to realize that this idea appeals to a white audience. The cosmology of Narnia presents the idea of a plain Earth, beyond whose borders lies paradise, Aslan. That's where the heroes go, following the routes of an ancient map that resembles a medieval map. English science fiction writer Terry Pratchett devoted an entire series of works with the predictable title Flat World to the concept. In his opinion, based on ancient Indian myths, the disc-shaped planet is supported by 4 elephants, and they, in their turn, stand on a centuries-old turtle. And the Pirates of the Caribbean, beloved by millions of viewers? Captain Jack Sparrow's team managed to reach the end of the planet, where a bottomless waterfall was raging. Russian writers have not shied away from this concept. For example, the story Monk at the End of the Earth by Sergei Sinyakhin describes an expedition to the Celestial Dome, after which its participants were subjected to state repression. However, the results of the expedition were indisputable. The flight into space is nothing more than a fiction based on the distortion of the picture of the universe. Some people are more comfortable to believe that the Earth is a sphere, while others are firmly convinced that our planet is flat. One way or another, it is impossible for most people to ascend into space to be visually convinced of the correctness of one of these movements, so we have to use what we have: our eyes, logic and common sense.